Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do an Ocean Beach digital paint along where I paint in real time and narrate what I'm doing. This video was requested by one of my viewers and I hope it will help beginner artists out there who wish to learn or follow my painting process. Alright, so to start off, I'm going to open up a canvas and it's going to have a 16:9 ratio. And the brush I'm using is just a simple round brush. The shape dynamics is going to be set on pen pressure, and this is just enables your brush to be able to draw bigger or smaller depending on how hard you push. You can also set the settings to smoothing, and this will just make your brush strokes a little bit more smooth. You can also set your spacing to 15% if you have smoothing turned on. And this will just make your computer work faster if you have a problem with your brush lagging or, not being able to paint fast. So this painting, I'm going to do an ocean painting, kind of from the top view. So I'm just going to start off by picking a nice blue color. I'm going to turn up my opacity to 100% and just cover my entire canvas with blue. Then I'm going to pick more orange color, make my brush a little smaller, and I'm going to draw in a beach. Okay. I'm not exactly sure what shape I want my water to come up on the beach right now, but that's a good start. I'm just going to make a new layer and pick a more cyan blue. And I'm going to make my brush soft and then turn my opacity to 30%. And this will just allow me to get kind of a softer transition as I paint a new color on my water. I'm going to paint this cyan blue kind of on the water that's closest to the beach, because lighter colors often indicate that the water is getting more shallow because more light is reflecting inside of it instead of just going, like the light will get trapped between the sand and the surface and light up the water versus just going down into the ocean, which is why it will be lighter color. After this, I'm going to maybe pick an in-between color between this blue and this blue. So maybe a little bit more babyish blue. And I'm going to just paint in between those two colors. I'm going to pick this darker blue and maybe make the whole water a little bit more blue, darker blue. Next, I'm going to pick this cyan blue and I'm going to make it a little bit more white. I'm going to paint right along the edge. The edge of the water where it hits the beach is, you're going to see the most white, because that's where the most agitation is, where it's going to make either sea foam or bubbles from that water, you know, and kind of grinding against the sand. So I changed to just a pure white because I think I just like the pure white right up against the sand. Okay, I'm going to clean that blue color up a little bit. I'm going to see if I can make this shape coming up on the water just a little bit more interesting. Right now it's kind of just a diagonal line, so I'm going to make another layer. For me, I usually use layers to save my progress, unless it's like something really detailed, like a tree, like a palm tree or something that I'm putting in front of something else that's also complicated, you know. I might make a new layer for that, but for the most part, I only use layers to save my progress so that I can easily go back and erase or go back to a previous stage if I mess my painting up. So I'm making a new layer and I'm going to just experiment to make a new kind of interesting shape up on the sand to see if I can just make it a little bit more interesting. This border between the sand and the water. And I'm not really following a reference, so a lot of this will be experimenting to see just what looks good. Let's see, maybe if I push that back a little bit. I kind of want this to be a really calm ocean, like on a calm day. There's not going to be a lot of waves, like breaking waves. So I don't know if I want my border to be too crazy. Maybe have it come down a little bit, maybe, because it feels like it's all the same width across the sand, so I'm trying to make it just have a little bit of interest here. Okay, just going to add a little bit more cyan. I'm going to soften my brush up and add, maybe go to 10% opacity. So I get really gradual, soft cyan here. Kind of build it up. Just put a little bit more cyan color in that water. Next I'm gonna maybe add a little bit of green to the water, because maybe there's like some algae or something in this water that's being illuminated by the sun in this shallow area. You're not going to see a lot of cyan colors in deeper parts of the ocean unless there's a cresting wave popping up out of it. because in order to get this cyan and this green color, the sun has to be able to illuminate it. And when it just goes straight down into the ocean, it doesn't have the ability to illuminate the water because it just gets lost in the depth of the ocean. I'm going to do a little bit more of this baby blue as a transition color between this green and this dark blue. I'm going to add a little bit more value to this dark blue. Make it a little bit more black. And this will just make it look like it's even deeper. It gets deeper and deeper as it gets further away from the beach. It's usually how it works, unless there's like a sandbank or something. Let me add a little bit more black. You can just add black by just moving your slider down towards the black corner. And as I'm painting, I'm looking at this navigator tab here. If you have Photoshop, I would highly suggest having this open. This just helps me get like an overall view of how the values and the composition is working. You'll see a lot of artists that, paint in oil or watercolor or whatever. They'll step away and look at their painting from a distance to make sure it registers to people from a distance, because at this point in time, details don't really matter. It's more of the overall impression. Sometimes I don't even look at this painting here as I draw. I'm brushing here, but I look over here almost half the time to just make sure I'm getting a good overall look to it. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more black. Even add more in this corner, the farthest distance from the beach. All right, I'm liking how that looks. So I'm going to do a new layer just so I can save my progress there. And I'm going to add a little bit of value to the beach now. So I'm just going to color pick this orange color, and I'm going to move it to a bit more white. So you just move it towards the white corner. And then I think I'm trying to decide if I want to have some wet sand on the beach or not. Like if this water has come up to dry sand, or if it's kind of shrinking back and there's some wet sand left behind. Let's just see how wet sand looks. I'm going to color pick this orange color, this orange sandy color, and just like make it more, I think I'll head over to the gray color and see how that looks. I think oftentimes, since I want it to look wet, like it's water, it might actually have some blue in it, because water reflects the sky color oftentimes a lot. So maybe I'll make it like instead of just a gray-orange color, I'll make it a blue-gray. I don't think that's quite dark enough. So I made that with like 30% opacity, but since I don't want to get more dark than that, I'm going to color pick that and then paint with that color at 30% opacity. And that will just prevent me from going overboard on the color. See, now you'll see it's in an orange region. Sometimes I can't find, like, you wouldn't guess that this color has a blue tint to it, you know, because it's in the orange color picking place. So sometimes I just pick a blue color and paint over the orange and then color pick that color. Then I can find the right tone, because it's hard to know exactly where in this box to pick. So right now this kind of looks like a shadow of the sea foam, or this, yeah, it's probably sea foam or agitated bubbles on the water. And that will often, water and sea foam will often make shadows as they come up on the beach. Since it's just following the edge here, it looks a lot like a shadow. But if I bring it out a little bit, it might start to look more like a wet beach. Like the sand, I mean, the water has already gotten the beach wet, and it's just moving away from it. I'm not sure if I want this look or not, but I'm just trying it out. See if it kind of makes a cool, adds some cool colors or interest to the painting. And that's looking okay. I'm going to color pick this wet sand. I'm going to make it even a darker color. And I'm going to add that shadow right along the sea foam, the water's edge here. To give like a more 3D impression that this has some volume. It's casting a shadow on the sand here. Just go right along the edge. I think maybe this shadow needs to have a little bit more blue, because shadows will also have a blue tint to them. So maybe I'll go to 10% opacity, because that was just too blue. You know, you can always change your opacity of your brush if you have the right color, but it's just coming on too strong. Just change it to a lower opacity. Then once you get the color you want, you know, then you can color pick that, and you can do a range of degrees of that color mixing into this more orangish brown color. I'm going to blend this blue color maybe out onto this sand, this wet sand, because I think the wet sand is also a little bit too orange. Needs some more blue in it, some more reflective sky color. And you don't necessarily have to add the blue everywhere, because the blue doesn't, like, the sky doesn't always reflect equally in shadows. You know, depending on how the light is bouncing off, it can reflect unequally, more strongly in some areas than other areas. Yeah, that's looking a lot more like wet sand, I think. Yeah, shadows are rarely black, like a black shade. Like, you know, if you had an orange color, they'd rarely just add, you know, go down and be black or for the shadow. You know, because the sky has a lot of influence over shadows. Whatever color your sky is the tint your shadows are going to be like. If it was a sunset, your shadows might have a more purple, reddish tint. But if it's in the middle of the day, it's going to have a more blue, like a baby blue tint to it. Probably only be like at night where the sky is black, where you'd have black shadows, which usually everything is black by that point, or mostly. Okay. I don't know if I like this orange strip here. Maybe I'll fade it out. So there we go. Add a little bit more wet sand right up here. I often use my color picker more than I actually use this little box, especially when I'm blending and just fine-tuning the things I already have down. You know, a good blending technique is to just use your opacity of your brush and just color pick one color and then brush over another color that you want to blend with that color. Then you have a blended color, and you can pick that blended color and then paint with that. And then eventually you'll get a good transition that you want. So now I think I'm going to add some sand color to the water, because right now it kind of looks a little bit cartoonish because the water's like has no transparency in it. You can't see any sand or indication that this water is see-through. It almost looks like it's like thick, like a thick blue slime or something, or a cartoon water, you know, because this is very shallow where it's coming up on the water. So most of the time you either see sand through it or this water would be very reflective. You'd see more of the sky colors or like a really reflective water. Like at the point of where like you wouldn't see the sand color, like your water would have to be reflective to the point where like if there's a tree, like you'd see that tree image in the water, which can happen. But I think I want some transparency in this water. I think I'll color pick maybe even that shadow color, because this is really wet sand and it might be shadowed as well, just because the sun doesn't have as easy of time lighting it up as it would maybe in this area. I'm going to flip my canvas horizontally. And this just helps me paint on this side, because I'm right-handed and I like to paint over here. Flipping the canvas also helps you get a different perspective, like it helps you see mistakes, because sometimes you get so used to looking at your painting in one way that you can't see the obvious mistakes because you just get used to looking at those mistakes. So they'll start to look natural, but once you flip it, you'll be like, oh, there's something wrong. Proportions are off, or, you know, so it just really helps you catch those things. I think I'm going to add a little bit of this bright orange into this sandy color. Not everywhere, but maybe like some places where the light, just the way it refracts in the water, the light is reaching it really brightly in certain areas under the water. I'm going to try to blend that in a little bit. I don't want to go overboard with it though, or make it look spotty by having them all like when you add in details like a new color like that, you want to make sure that where you're adding it isn't equally spaced and it's like not the same size of color across, you know, or else it will look kind of like spots in your water instead of, you want a lot of variety, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Like small, medium, and large shapes. That's a very common thing across all art pieces, is to have small, medium, and large shapes. And that pertains to value and colors, all sorts of things. Okay, I think I'm gonna add maybe a little bit of green, like a more green color. So I'm gonna color pick this area and I'm just gonna make it a little bit more green. Just in this one area, just to add a little bit of color interest. Because if this does have algae or things in it, if the water's getting illuminated even more, it's gonna have a more green tint. Because this blue color, this could be sky color, this could be sky reflection. It could be both, it could be the water color or sky reflection, but you rarely see green unless it's transparent. Like the water is the thing you're seeing, like the algae in the water itself is what's giving it that green color. So green is a really easy way to tell the viewer that it's a transparent part. The water is being lit up by the sun and you're seeing the stuff in the water. Let's see, I think I lost a little bit of that bright orange in that area, so I'm gonna paint a little bit more of that in there. Because like I said, this is maybe an area that I want the water to be really lit up, so the sand is getting lit up as well by the sun. All right, seeing if I can get these colors to blend a little bit better. I think I'm going to add a little bit lighter blue. A really light blue usually indicates sky reflection. So this light blue is going to be reflections on the waves. It's just a way to add some more color variation in your water, to add some reflections from the sky going on top. And you might have full areas where it's just reflections from the sky or the things are around the water. And then you might have areas where it's like the water's see-through and you can see into the water because they're going to happen at different places because of the different angles. I'm going to do a new layer here. I'm going to try to put some sky reflection over this transparent area just to see how that looks, because transparent areas can have reflections right over top of them. Sometimes makes your water look kind of cool when you add those kind of things. The trick is finding out where it will look good, you know, not going overboard on it. Let me see, kind of looks interesting. Let me see if I should add some more brown in here. Make the water more transparent, tiny bit going further back. Maybe I'll add a darker color because I have like a light area over here. So maybe I have like a shadowed area where maybe light is being shadowed by something that's over top of the water, like some film or sea foam or even waves in the sand can make darker patches of sand because the waves in the sand will make it harder for the light to reach it. I'm going to do a new layer, and I'm going to maybe add a overall blue tint to this again to maybe make it a little bit more like water again, like a blue film over top. At least for now. I might make it so it's less filmy looking and more just crystal clear in the future, but I'll just do that for now. Okay. Trying to see what direction I should make this water. Right now the water looks a little bit like flat, like this could almost be the sky. And so I want to make it look more like you're looking down at the water. So maybe instead of doing this so flat, I actually need to make these lines kind of follow or curve a little bit. Or blend up higher, maybe. Trying to see exactly. I'm going to go back. Well, I'm actually going to merge a few layers. Because right here, you know, this line direction makes it look more like you're looking down at the water. I think it's because this is slanted. So it doesn't look like a horizon line. Whereas here, I made it more flat, and so now this is looking like the sky, which is not something I want. So I just need to follow maybe this angle, this slanted angle more. That's why I really like layers, is sometimes you do things in your painting that starts making it look off, and you don't really understand where you went off and why it looked so good before, and then it suddenly doesn't. But with layers, you can just go back to your previous, where it was looking good, and see what you changed. And then you can kind of figure out where you went wrong. Which is really helpful. Let's see, I need like a transition color. So I'll do like a baby blue color again. And just try to keep that line more slanted. Trying to get a good blend here. I would highly suggest you get shortcut keys for the color picking tool, the brush tool, and the eraser tool, and also your opacity and your brush sizes. Because I use them so much, it would take forever if I had to physically go and change the settings with my pen. So right here, this is a flat line, which I made, so I'm going to try and make that more slanted as well. So it follows this slanted kind of line. And do the same over here, kind of make everything a little bit more slanted. So it changes the perspective. So the water doesn't look as flat. Looks more like you're looking down at it. At least a little bit. So I don't want any sky in this picture. I want a downward angle. So when people look down at the ground, they don't see any sky. You know? So, all right, I'm gonna do a new layer because I think it's turning out good. A lot better than it used to be. I'm gonna flip my canvas back just to see how it looks from this angle. See if there's some more things I should change. So I'm on a new layer here in case I mess this up. I'm gonna add some more brown and let's see how that looks. So I like the green and the stuff over there, but I don't know if it's the right shape. So I might just erase it all and see if I can add it in later. Because I'm not sure about it yet. It might just be a little bit too colorful at this point before I really know what I'm doing. Sometimes it's easier to add just the accent colors at the end when you have your composition more figured out. Okay, I think I'm going to start adding some sea foam in my water, and I'm looking at some references here. I'll show you real quick. So I have some references that I found on the internet to kind of help a little bit with the sea foam because I'm not super great at it. Oftentimes I'll use references just kind of as my safety net. I'll do a ton of experimenting, but if I get super frustrated, I'll look at my references and see, what I'm doing wrong or what kind of patterns are in my references. I don't follow them like exactly because my water is completely different, but I can see some patterns to get a certain feel I want. So let's see, I'm on a new layer. So I'm going to kind of look at my references to see a little bit of how they, like the shapes of the sea foam, like how it travels across the water. There seems to be a lot of S shapes in sea foam. And it seems to like have more stretched out S shapes, like in the direction that the water is flowing. So I think I might want like a kind of this direction of movement, like the water is heading in this direction, because that's how my colors are indicating it's moving in this angled direction. So that's kind of, you know, on my sea foam. I'm just getting the basic direction of the sea foam I want first. And then I'm gonna probably make it a little bit more interesting. Yeah, I kind of like this kind of 45-degree direction. Okay, I just have to figure out how to make that look natural now. So, let's see. I'm gonna work with maybe 30% opacity just so it's less stark at the beginning. So I don't get, so I can kind of build up and erase easier without like going crazy at first, and just like doing one line, I can kind of build up on that line, kind of blend it in to each other easier when I'm at 30% opacity versus 100%. I want this to look like be calm water though, and it looks like sea foam really gets more S-shaped and like really thick when there's like a crashing wave, or like there's crashing waves coming up onto the beach. And I want to try out just a really calm beach this time. You know, this little shape here could almost be a crashing wave. Like I could turn it into a crashing wave. Like this bright spot. Because remember, you know, when waves are coming up out of the water, they'll get super bright as well. You know, so a bright strip like this could be a crashing wave. I could turn that into a crashing wave. But I don't think I'm going to do that this time. It's just going to be really calm, and which means I'm probably going to not have very much sea foam out in the ocean. It's just going to probably be mostly just right along this edge where this water is grinding and churning against the sandy shore. It's probably where most of it's going to be, so I don't want to go too far out. I'm using my eraser tool to just, because I'm on a new layer, I can just kind of erase, kind of fade out those lines going out with my eraser tool. Yeah, so it seems like in more calm water, the lines can also be kind of almost straight, like less, like there could be like no S shapes in it. It's just kind of coming up onto the beach. And maybe that this is an indication of more like it's bubbles instead of sea foam, because it looks like the sea foam has S shapes in it, but like if this is just bubble agitation, Perhaps it's a little bit more straight. I learn something new every time I paint. I often think about, like, why are some shapes different in some references and some shapes aren't, and why do they give you different impressions? So I might not be right about that assumption about seafoam, but it might be the case. I'm going to fade out those lines with the eraser here. Let's go to 30% eraser. I'm going to color pick the white again. I'm not painting with pure white, or I try not to at the beginning, because if you don't paint with pure white, like there's a little bit of that, like a little bit of color to it, then later in your painting you can paint with pure white and it will look super bright. Like you can do some really cool highlights if you try to save that white. But if you don't, you can also just paint in your shadows instead of painting in your highlights. And I sometimes do that too. I paint with pure white and then I'll go back and do a little bit of shadow touch up at the end to make that white appear brighter. I really like this so far. I think I'm gonna do a new layer just so I can keep it, can save that progress there. I'm gonna try just a tiny bit of S shapes, because this is the ocean, so maybe I do want it more like there is a bit of sea foam in it and it's not all just bubbles, like agitated bubbles. So looking at my references, there's S shapes in the sea foam. There's also like almost like circle-ish shapes. Like within those S shapes. Let me see. I still don't think I want very much of it though, so maybe it will just be right up. Like maybe it won't go so far, it'll be just right up next to this big white patch of white of the sea foam. It's just kind of all over the place. Like it's like doesn't really have a direction. It's just squiggly lines everywhere maybe. It's a good way to draw it. And it's thicker in some areas and thinner in other areas. So it might have a thicker area and then these kind of more transparent areas. I'm going to do some negative painting here and maybe break up this white by painting in some watercolor here. I'm going to try to keep this, you know, this 45-degree direction so that it hits this, creates an X shape with the water movement. Because this like direction is almost like it's moving forward or it's moving backward, this water. Maybe I'll have a little line come up in this corner, almost like it's coming from a place that's off the page. Do a bunch of squiggles. bunch of, I'm going to fade out some of this thing with an eraser. As it gets farther away, do a little bit of fading. And paint back over it a little bit. Let me flip the canvas here, see how it's looking on. I'm flipping it. I think I need a little bit more white over here. A little bit more direction. Because the sea foam seems to have these long kind of thick lines, almost like, so it makes like sections of water that's coming up, like in like little flower petals almost. Like the water doesn't all come up as one big thing all the time. It almost looks like little flower petals of water with these thick streams of sea foam kind of separating them. Okay, so I'm just going to make a new layer because I really like how this is turning out. And I'm going to see, I don't know if I like this bluish gray color. So I either need to make it more blue where it's reflecting more light from the sky, or I need to make it more transparent because the in-between color I don't know if I like. I'm going to flip my canvas horizontal because I'm going to be painting over here. Let's see. Pick a brown color. Let me go to 10% opacity here. Get a really soft transition. See this blue here? I might not paint everything brown because this blue could be sky reflection. Like sky reflection will be in certain areas, and then the transparent water where there's no sky reflection, you'll be able to see down into the water. So I can just keep that as sky reflection. I think this strip of blue here is kind of throwing me off as well because it kind of looks like there's a wave here. So I'm going to soften up this line here in between because I want these to be real, like I want this to be really smooth water, not with a lot of waves. So when you have harsh lines, it indicates that there's more waves, more harsh waves as well. I'm going to try to smooth that out to make this water more smooth. That's better. There's not really a right or wrong way to draw water. But certain ways that you draw, it's going to give a different impression. And there's more common things that it happens. So if you draw something more uncommon, it might not look right to some people too. But you know, you also want to have a balance in your painting, you know, like if all your waves are calm, you know, I mean, if you want calm water, you know, you want to have variety in your painting, but you also need to have some similarities. Like you wouldn't want really rough waves on part, you know, on one side and then really calm waves on the other, because that wouldn't happen, you know. It's either one or the other. in most cases, unless something's causing those waves to get rough, like a whale or something is hopping out of the water, causing it to be more rough in the calm water. But most of the time it'll be similar waves across your whole painting. Okay, I'm going to make a new layer because I like how that's turning out. That soft water. I'm going to flip my canvas here. I'm going to try to add that green back in that I took away at the beginning, just to see if I can, probably a little bit greener, add just a little bit more color variation. I'll go to 10% because that green's coming on a little bit too strong. There we go. 10% opacity is really good for just putting something subtle in there without going too overboard. Something really subtle. Kind of looks cool. Just kind of gives a little bit more color variation. I'm going to go back and try to add some of this brighter sand color in here. I'm going to go to 10% again. Go to my eraser tool, go to 10% to kind of erase where I went a little bit overboard. I'm going to color pick that brownish orange. That will keep me from getting too bright. Go 10% again. And see if I can add some light parts in the sand. I'm not sure if I like that actually. Doesn't look quite right. Maybe it's because this looks like a shadow, like the water is, as a whole is in a shadowed area. So maybe if I want some light sand in this part, maybe this bright sand should come right up to the edge of the water so it doesn't look like this area is in a shadowed area. Let's see if that makes a difference. Let's add some. Yeah, see that's looking like it might fit a little bit more. I don't know if I like the colors yet though. But I'm just experimenting because I don't know quite what I want at this point. I'm kind of thinking I want to have a little bit of transparency though in these waves. So see how this bright color comes up here, so maybe I'll extend this bright sand as well. So it's, yeah, I think me trying to make wet sand just made the wave look like it was in a shadowed area. So maybe I'll kind of get rid of that mostly. Or I'll extend this a little farther out. No, because I guess wet sand wouldn't go out that far if there's no wet sand over here. Maybe I'll just have it a little bit like this wave is like retracting, but this wave has gone all the way up to the dry sand. I kind of like that. I'm going to make a new layer to save that progress there. I'm going to add a little bit of sky reflection over top of this transparent. Maybe I'll add a little bit more white to the sky reflection, this transparent part. Add another layer just because I'm going to try to make maybe a little bit more sea foam out here to give like a little bit more movement to this water. Just like little shapes kind of going in this 45-degree angle. Gonna fade that out with the eraser brush. I don't want to get too far out there though, because this is calm water, so, and I'm kind of designing it around not being overloaded with sea foam. So maybe it's an ocean that doesn't have quite as much of that material. I'm not exactly sure actually what creates sea foam. It's probably something to do with the salt and minerals, but you don't see it everywhere. It's only in really rough like oceans with larger waves where it's roughing it up to kind of like soap, or it's not in everything, in every beach. I can add a little bit more transparent water here. So I'm going to add some darker brown to kind of show that sand under the water. But I'm also keeping a little bit of this blue because that's good sky reflection color. Kind of blend that in a little bit with some blue. Kind of go back and forth between those colors. I kind of made a 45-degree kind of line here. Maybe that will kind of show like there's no sea foam right here, but like the sky reflection is going in that direction, so it kind of gives the illusion the waves are going in that direction. Maybe I'll do a little flare of green on top of there. Kind of give a little bit more variety to where the colors are in my painting. I'm just on 10% now because I'm just really subtly painting in a bit of green over in these areas. Not a ton, but just a tiny bit. So it just gives a little bit different feel than in other places where it's just like pure blue. Maybe I'll put a tiny bit of green in other areas as well. Over on this side. I kind of like that variation. Like not everything is blue. Almost looks kind of pretty to put the green right by this white. Almost makes the white kind of glow a little bit. but we'll see how that, we might not want to add it everywhere though, or else it might start to look like too much like a pattern, like a busy pattern, you know. Let's see if I can add a little bit of brown here. Maybe I'll just do a really soft faded brown. So I'll go to 10% and just do kind of a softer fade into that green. Now I have to think of how I'm going to transition from going at this 45-degree angle to going like this angle. It seems like it's only when it's like spreading across the beach that really gets this direction, this 45-degree direction, and the rest of the waves are kind of, that haven't hit the beach yet, are going to be more going in this direction, the opposite. I'm not exactly sure how to make that transition natural. Let's make a new layer, and I'm just going to start drawing a little bit of sky reflection on this water just to get the movement of the water better, add more detail to it. It's going to be like a lightish blue color, lighter than this. So just like color pick this and then just make it lighter. I'm going to go to, let's go to 10%. Do it really subtly. 10% opacity. And I guess the important thing to do here is kind of have them heading in the same direction, like this these lines that I very kind of faintly already put down. But you also want to have variety in like the length and the width of these lines. And maybe make them a little wavy as well. Like maybe I don't want completely calm water. They just kind of go up and down in some wavy lines, like smiley faces and frowny faces. They can kind of cross over one another in different ways, but they're all following this kind of line here. See, maybe I'll have like big open places where there's no sky reflections, you know, so it's not like everywhere on my painting. I'll fade this out a little bit. Sometimes it's good just to use your eraser tool if you're on a different layer, just to fade out some edges, because it gives a good variation in value, like where everything's not like 10% everywhere. It's like it just fades out overall in some areas. I'm going to color pick here to get a new reflection, because sometimes if I were to paint with this color over top, see how it's way dark? Doesn't even look like a lighter color. So I need to color pick that and make it that a lighter color. That's a really good sign where when you color pick somewhere else, if it doesn't look good in another area, that's a good sign you have a good value change, that not everything is the same color everywhere and the same value. So that's actually a good thing when you have to do that. paintings with a lot of different variation in colors and value just look more interesting overall. So this kind of greenish white looks pretty cool up against. I really like this so far, so I'm just going to save it to put my mind at ease a little bit, because I don't want to mess this up. I really like digital paintings because it really helps me to kind of just let loose and try things, because there's not really any big consequences to messing up. You just hit the backspace or go back to a different layer, a lower layer, and you don't have to spend too much time. You don't have to spend any time fixing your mistakes. When I do oil paintings, I do all my planning. I plan the whole thing out digitally, because you don't have to waste paint trying to get your composition figured out. And then I can just copy the picture that I did digitally. It's much easier than doing all this experimenting when I'm painting in real life. Trying to make maybe kind of the same, like right here, I'm trying to figure out a good way to kind of blend this forward movement into this side movement. Maybe I'll do this more with a white color, so it looks more like sea foam than some sort of, like the sea foam wouldn't be green, right? Probably better not. There's no green underneath it, so it wouldn't be a bright green. Let's see. Trying to get a good balance so there's not too much, but a good direction. I really don't know what a good direction is for this. I know it's an S shape with some white maybe. Maybe this kind of connection doesn't look too great. Maybe that's a little bit too harsh of an angle right there. So maybe this could like go more like that into the water. I think I'm gonna erase that layer. Try again. I like how this looks. Maybe I don't need any more seafoam. Maybe I can just leave it like that. Maybe there wouldn't be seafoam in that area with how little I have everywhere else. I'm gonna do some white. I'm gonna do a new layer because I didn't make a new layer when I started again. I deleted that last layer. Let's see, add in some more white. Hopefully by adding white here, it's going to make this look more like wet sand than water that's in a shadow, like under a tree or something, or a cloud. I don't want this to look like there's a cloud shadowing this water. I want it to look wet, like this is wet sand. So maybe to help with that, I might add some sky reflection or some sun reflection on this water, so it looks like kind of more sparkly. Let's start with a blue-gray, because I'm going to do a sky reflection first on it. Because wet sand will have this really thin film of water over it, which at the right angle can reflect the sky, or can even reflect like really clearly if it's the right kind of film on top. Could reflect a whole image just in the sand. That really thin film of water. Let's do another blue color, just a little bit lighter blue. Maybe add a little bit more white to it. And I'm going to go at 10% opacity, just help blend this in really softly. And the sky reflection won't be on every part of the wet sand, because depending on the angle, it's gonna show a reflection or just show the sand, so it probably won't be across the whole thing in most cases. Probably just like in a one little like flare or two little areas maybe. I'm gonna deepen some shadows, make more contrast. Let me color pick that and just make it a little bit more dark. I'm gonna deepen this shadow underneath this water where it's right next to the beach. Try to build up my contrast. I'm adding this little divot in here because it lines up with this little flower petal of water coming up, and it might make it look more like a petal of water if I kind of put that little indent in there. So it's not completely flat across. Looks pretty good. I'm going to do a new layer to save that. I'm looking over here to see the overall colors and values, to just see where's a good place to fix and improve upon. So just keep that in mind. It's a good practice to keep looking at your painting from a distance. It's going to really help come together in a good way. If it looks good when you stand far away from it, it's going to look good when you start adding details. Adding details does not fix anything if you don't have a good base, good overall balance to everything. It's looking good. Flip my canvas. I feel like this could have even brighter greens in an area. Let's see, probably gonna make a new layer just in case I do something really weird. Let's color pick this actually and just make it greener. Maybe make it really yellow. This lime green. And I'll just paint it on really soft with a 10% opacity. Just in like a really subtle areas. Kind of make an area just kind of pop a little bit more. Just makes this white area glow a little bit when you put a really bright color right by it.